Alright everyone, how you doing? I'm here today to talk to you about something called ArrayLists. So this is kind of a bulked up, bigger version of arrays. So here's the deal with arrays. An array has a fixed length, right? When you set up an array, you set it up to store 4 ints or 8 booleans or something. But inside an array, you can put primitives or objects. So if you create your own objects, you can put them in an array, and you can also put a primitive, and remember a primitive is like an int, a double, a boolean, a char, that kind of thing. But what we're going to learn about today is something called an array list. And array lists are more flexible. So they're more flexible in that they have more features, and the length can change. So you can set up an array list that's empty. You can add elements to it, you can subtract elements, and change the length as you go. It has a lot more features, right? You can take something in and put it in a certain spot, and you can insert something, you can change a certain one. So it just has like a lot of cool features that we're going to find out about. Some other things about ArrayLists, just to note before we start coding, you can only store objects in a list. And there is a workaround for primitives. We'll talk about that in just a minute. One thing that's one issue about ArrayLists is when you use ArrayLists, you must do the same import statement. So the import statement you need is exactly the same as you'd use for the scanner. So you just do import java.util.star, and that will go ahead and give you the ArrayList. Okay, some of the other things. This is actually a class someone wrote. So someone figured, hey, there was like a lame thing about arrays. I want to add more features to be able to do more, so they made the ArrayList class. And another kind of cool thing, or maybe not cool thing, is they actually do run a lot slower than arrays. So if you're storing something with millions of entries because you're trying to plot world domination, you might want to use an array instead of ArrayList. But I think you guys are going to see today, ArrayLists are pretty sweet. So let's get started. We're going to play around with the driver first, then maybe we'll write some other methods. So when you set up an array list, here's what it looks like. When you set up an array list, you give the type in arrows. So we've never used these before, but if you want to set up an array list of string objects, well, let's call like movies. I do it like that. So I do array list arrow strings. And that's just saying it is an array list of string objects. So it's a list of string objects. Okay. And this is a new array list of strings. And then you actually are calling a constructor in the array list class. You need to have parentheses and then a semicolon. Okay, now you might want to know, well, how do I add things to this list? How do I see it? How do I remove things? And the way that this is going to work is you need to call a .add method. So to add something to a list, you call .add, and it's a method. So if I want to add a string, I'll do movies.add, and then I'll put in a new string. I don't know, Happy Gilmore. Think about that movie the other day. It's a good one. Or I could do movies. Of course, I could set up a string independently, right? I could do a string like old one is a new string. Let's call it Casablanca. And then I could go ahead and I could do movies.add old one. So that would be another way, of course, I could do it. All right, so let's talk about some other features of this. One of the great things about these, one of the great things about ArrayLists that you might not actually expect is that they actually do print out nicely. So if you try and just print out the list, you might be like, well, you can't even print an array. Can I print out an array list? And the answer is yes. Someone actually did write a toString, and they print out really nicely in the form of just these brackets. And it just shows you all the entries and the spots they're in. So that's pretty cool. Okay, now what else can you do with them? Well, you might want to look at the quick reference guide, right? So let's take a look at that. And you might notice, oh, there's all sorts of stuff in the quick reference guide. There is a size method that's like analogous to .length. There's a .add, that's the one we just did. There's actually an overloaded .add that if you want to add something to a certain spot. Now, I want to talk about this E. This E is a little weird on the quick reference guide. The E just means whatever type of object you have an array list of. So if it's an array list of strings, you put a string there. If it's an array list of characters, you would put a character in the input. The E is just flexible, telling you whatever type of object you have in your list, that's what the E is. So I'll actually put that in the note at the top. So in the quick reference guide, the E is whatever type of object is in your array list. So whatever's inside here, that's the E. So it's like that. So if you have an array list of strings, E is string. So this method would input a string. These methods would return a string. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So that printed out the whole list. If you want to access one individual entry, you're going to do this .get. Okay, so if I want to access the one that's in spot 1, I can just print out, say, movies.get1. And this should be analogous to, this is like doing movies sub1 if it were a normal array. So a lot of the challenge on this is going to be noticing the difference between arrays versus array lists. And instead of doing movies bracket 1, we do movies sub 1. Okay, so once I've put that in, and this add is just adding it to the end of the list. And it'll put it in that way. Okay, so let's go ahead and do, let's run this code and kind of see what's going to execute here. Okay, so when I do that, I'm going to run the code and it's going to show up. And where did it go? Come on, buddy. Okay, and we'll see the one in spot 1 is Casablanca. Now, you might have noticed that there was another .add, right? You could actually add something to a certain spot. And what that does is that just shifts over everything that you have to the side of that. So, for example, if you have like let's say you have movie 1, movie 2, and movie 3. If you try and .add and you want to add to spot, let's say spot 2, and of course they're numbered like everything else. So if you want to add spot 2 and I want to add in, like M8, then what that would do is I would insert that into spot 2 and it shifts everything else over. So the list gets longer and this list would become M1, then M2, then M8, then M3. So it's inserting the new one at spot 1 and everything else is getting shifted over to the side. So again, that's the other add. So that's what it's saying here. It inserts the object at position index, and everything else is moved to the right, adding 1 to their indices. So if I want to add something in between Happy Gilmore and Casablanca, I would put it in spot 1. So we can put that in. So I'm going to do, okay. So I'll do movies.add, and like the quick reference guide showed, I need to give the location of that first. So I need to do movies.add to spot 1, and I'm going to put in, let's say, a new string. I don't know, happy feet. Like, it doesn't matter, right, what you put in there. Okay, so that'll add it into spot 1, and then if we go ahead and print out the list after that, we'll see that the new one has, in fact, been added to that spot. Okay, where did this guy have too much stuff open? Okay, so when I do that, we'll go ahead and see. All right, it adds it in, and now it's put in spot 1 and moved the Casablanca over. All right, so what are some of the other features that you have in here? Well, we did add. What about size, right? So the size is analogous to .length. So to get the length of an array list, you call the .size method. Now, I know it's annoying that it's not .length. It's stupid. I don't know why they chose that. But again, this is analogous to using .length for arrays. So if I want to print out the length at this point in time, so movies.size, like at this point in time, I only added 2 movies. But then once I've added another spot in and added a third one to it, I can print out the size, and we can see, of course, that will actually work out nicely and have a size of 3. Okay, so size updates over time. The other things we talked about .get, that's how you get what's in a certain spot. .set. What .set allows you is it's like changing something. So if you want to change one element in the array list, so to change an element in the array list, you're going to use .set. And this is like doing, a sub 2 equals like, a number or whatever. So that's how you can change an element. So let's see. With set, you give the location first, and then you put in the new object. So it replaces the element at that position with that. So again, the quick reference guide is just really useful for that. So let's say I got tired of Casablanca and I wanted to change it to another old movie. Well, I could do movies.set. So I do set spot 2, and I'll make a new string for, I don't know, Citizen Kane. There's another classic old one. Okay. So again, what this is doing is this sets the object in spot 2 to be Citizen Kane, and it just kind of deletes the old one. It's gone. So once I've done this, if I go ahead and print the movies, we'll see that Casablanca is gone and has just been kind of completely replaced here. Okay, so that's what we'll see at this point. Now, the other one was .remove. .remove is interesting. So .remove kind of works in the opposite direction. If you tell it to remove what's in a certain spot, it just gets rid of it and shifts everything else over. So if your array, let's say, looks like this, like let's say you just have M1, M2, M3, and M4, and you want to remove the object that's in, spot 1, then everything else shifts over, and you would just be left with the array list that was M1, M3, and M4. Okay. So the way remove works, as you see on the quick reference guide, you just give it the location. It actually does return the element that was there, which might be useful at some point. Now, probably not. But it just removes the element that was there, and everything else shifts one over to the left. Okay, so we could see that. Let's say we want to get rid of, I don't know. We want to get rid of Happy Feet. I don't know anything about that. So if I want to remove, actually, let's get rid of Happy Gilmore. Let's remove the object in spot 1. So we're going to do movies.remove1. And then again, that shifts everything else over to the left. So I actually just removed what was in spot 1, which is now Happy Feet. Okay, so what that will do is now when I print out the movie, we'll see that it actually did remove that, and the size will be updated to 2. Okay, so when we see that, it removed what was in spot 1, and Citizen Kane shifted over. So there's not an empty spot, it removes it and gets rid of it. Okay, so that was some of the basics. I'll be back with another video in just a sec. Thanks for watching, guys.